Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's relatively short and fun video compared to my usual stuff, we're going to talk about some truly wireless earbuds from a company called Status. Now this is the Between 3 ANC, active noise cancellation being in the name, but it retails for $250. Typically it's sold on status.co's website for $180, also on Amazon for $180, and it's available in bone color, which is slightly off-white, and black. Now, I have enough black electronics, and frankly, when it comes to earbuds, I hate losing them. I don't know if you've ever traveled and you have a little black earbud, and God forbid you're on a plane and it's a night flight, a black bud tends to disappear. So that was the first thing that came in mind because I have a lot of wireless earbuds that I kind of alternate through. Interestingly enough, the one I use the most is the one, or used to use the most, is the one that I don't even like the sound as much. It's just because it's small and comfortable and cheap enough where if I lost it, I wouldn't be as upset. But these kind of change some things. Now, it's not perfect, and I'll get into all that in the review, but I chose the white just for that reason, just so it'd be easier to find. I think it also hides fingerprints and marks better because I've actually had this for about 3 months now. I've been sick off and on for the past couple months since Can Jam, so it really put me behind, and I'm really sorry to the people waiting on some coverage, but here we are with yet another one. So let's talk about some basics. Now, I already mentioned the color choices, and of course, you have this nice little case. Now, the battery life varies, and it depends on if you use active noise cancellation or the pass-through function, but you can get over 10 hours on one charge without even needing the case. If you enable ANC, it drops down to 8, but without it, you can get up to 12. The case gives you another 24 hours. Now, the case is also Qi wireless charging compatible. Has a USB-C port on the back so you can charge it 2 ways, and this little button is to put it in pairing mode. You can also do that with the earbuds themselves. Now what's cool about these is it uses a triple driver configuration. You have 2 balanced armature drivers which kind of handle the upper frequencies, and then a 10mm dynamic driver to kind of handle the bass and the lower frequencies. So you get a little welcome card when you open it up, warranty information, 30-day money-back guarantee with a 1-year warranty. And I left this blue film on top because it's underneath the earbuds when you pull them out. And if you're not paying attention, you go to put them back in, you might be wondering why they're not charging. It might stand out less if you got the black model, but I pulled this out as a reminder to double check that. This is a little quick start guide. It gives you some of the controls, understanding how to use it. I'll get into the ergonomics here in a sec because there are some things that don't work as easily as I had hoped. And then of course, you know, what's to be expected for what's included. Now, the main reason why I'm opening this case isn't to open the guide, it's to show you the accessories because there's a couple really cool things that stand out with this earbud. Obviously, you get a matching USB cable. I know this is something minor, but it's a nice touch. Some companies, when you get a white or different colored product, they don't always give you the matching cable. It's always just a black cable. So it's that little attention to detail that I like. Now, check this out. You may notice some weird looking things here, these shapes. Do you see the size difference? I'm trying to lay them out so it's a little bit more obvious of these 2 pieces. Now this is right and left, so I might as well, let's try it this way. That way it's easier to kind of see the symmetry of it all. This is like puzzles. So this changes the actual diameter of the part that goes against your ear, not what goes in your ear. This is huge. Because originally, when I first used this, I didn't think to change those. I just stuck with the R1 and L1, which is the smaller piece, and then I picked the right tip. This is such a critically important thing for any IEM or earbud is getting the sizing right, because this little tip, you want it to have a good seal. If you go too big, it tends to crinkle or cause discomfort. If you go too small for your particular ear, it doesn't mean you can't use small if that's your ear shape. But if you go too small, you may not get a good seal. That drastically impacts bass and lower mid frequencies, making these or any IEM sound like a tin can if it's not sealed properly. Now I want to measure the nozzle and show you because there's a couple really nice things I like about this design. It's an oval shape instead of perfectly round. So yes, the tips, I don't want to say they're proprietary because I've tried round spin fit tips and they still work just because they're silicone, they're stretchy. So these are designed obviously for this, but by doing this, they still give the space that the drivers need to sound properly, to sound the way they're supposed to, 6 millimeters of width here. Now this is going to seem huge if you're familiar with IEM openings. Almost 7 millimeters on the taller side. So let's just make sure that looks good. So it is a little bit larger, but because of this oval shape and being closer to 6 mil on the narrow side, it doesn't feel large in my ear. It still fits really well. Now look how easy it is to switch this. I'm on the L2 right now. I just pop this off. Now I can go to L1. Slide that back on. There's a little lip right here, so I'm going to put that on. Then I put the tip back on, and usually you can just kind of stretch it over. Whatever your technique is to get this on, stick with that. I'm just kind of putting it on fast for the video. Now once you've gotten the tip on, just to show you the difference, you can see a pretty big size difference from L1 to R1, or sorry, L1 to R2. That makes a big difference in how it seats around your ear. And because these are a little bit larger, physically this is kind of big, you want to have as much of a stable, I guess, pressure point or even distribution of pressure around your ear so they don't fall out. By design, when I went with the L1 and R1, when I pulled down a little bit, it was pretty snug. But anytime I pushed up, it was very easy to pop it out. Now, if I go to the smaller piece, I can still have a good seal because this is the right tip for me. Down is still pretty stable, but anytime I touched it up at all, this would fall out. That was a huge reason why I used a different earbud whenever I was working outside, because I totally forgot that I could change these little adapters. And just to be honest and transparent, I use the MeFo S. TWS buds are a lot. I think they're about $120. They sound pretty poor in comparison. They're bass heavy, not the best resolution. It's a very warm sound profile. I just wore them because they're small enough they stay to my ear. Now, Status calls these silicone pieces fit wings. I'm spending more time talking about this because it's so important to find the right one. That really makes a big difference for actually being active and using these out and about, not just sitting at home. It didn't really matter to me which one I use if I was just sitting at my desk because the tip is doing enough of a good job maintaining a seal. But once I switched to L2 and R2, now I could use them much more often, and I didn't feel as uncomfortable about them falling out or hitting the ground when I was doing, outdoor activities and such. Now, ergonomically, these are designed to kind of angle towards your jawline. So think of it at, if it's pointing slightly forward and down, you've seated them correctly. There are some things I like and dislike about this design. Now, having it larger means that if you mispress, because there are touch-sensitive controls, if you press down here, you could see that let's try to get the angle right. You can see it flex. That's because I missed. I don't usually like how that feels. I typically prefer lower profile TWS buds because it's an all or nothing affair. If you're making contact with it, chances are I'm sending the instruction through and I'm not like breaking the seal. Now these fit wings make a big difference on maintaining more of a seal and keeping it stable, but the touch sensor is actually on the non-shiny part. Originally you would think that the metal part right here is where you do your controls. It looks nice, and I'm glad that they put the touch sensitive side on the top part, because if you always pushed on the piece that was sticking out, you're always going to move them, and it's very uncomfortable. Much easier to use the touch up here. Now, the touch controls are pretty reliable. It's not like you're going to wear it with gloves, but you can tap to play pause. You can skip a track. You can press and hold on the right side to turn it up, press and hold on the left side to turn it down. There's also a little button on the top, and pressing it once will enable or disable ANC, and it switches from ANC to pass-through mode to go through basically the no mode enabled function, which is no ANC and no pass-through. You have to use the mobile app, which I'll show you as well. But you can double press this to activate your voice assistant and triple press this to play your battery life. I believe that covers the controls. I'm going to consult one thing real quick because I don't want to misquote. So yes, and then if you hold both simultaneously for 3 seconds, it turns it off. That's the only thing I missed. These buttons are not the easiest things to press. Every time I go to do a double press for voice assistant, typically only one click goes through. And when I do the triple press, because trying to go for 2 usually gives me 1, you can see where this is going. I get very inconsistent results using the top button. Thankfully, how a lot of people use it is just for ANC on and off. But I found that if you held it with 2 hands to keep it really steady, then I can do it no problem. It's just because the button's fairly recessed and not super tactile, and pushing down on this while trying to support it with your thumb, if there's any kind of movement, you may not get that second or third click, whatever you're trying to do. So ergonomically, it's okay. This is built larger to handle those drivers, the triple driver, that ridiculous battery life, and it has 6 microphones in this system. So with that being said, let's do a quick voice test so you can hear what my voice sounds like on an Apple product. All right, so this is what my voice sounds like on the Status between 3 ANC with a Bluetooth connection to an Apple iPhone. There's obviously a lot of compression and artifacting. It's pretty normal when you go into the hands-free profile mode because now you're doing 2-way bandwidth when Bluetooth typically sounds better in one direction, which is why it sounds so much better for listening to music. So it does actually have some good noise suppression. I'm going to talk and type on this keyboard just to generate some noise. I'll switch over to the boom so you can hear what it sounds like there and then go back to this just so you can see that I'm not typing too softly. So we're going to start with the ANC mic. And now while I'm talking to you and typing, you can hear it's doing a pretty good job of eliminating some background noise, but this is what my voice sounds like using a Bluetooth connection. All right, now when it comes to sound quality, there's a few things to consider, and one, that is how active noise cancellation or ambient or pass-through mode affects your sound quality. So the default sound profile is a little bit warm, and I'll show you how it measures. Actually, I do measure everything I have, but when you enable active noise cancellation, they seem to try to compensate because typically ANC tends to make things a little bit muddy sounding, whereas when ANC is enabled, they actually bumped up the treble and even possibly thinned out the bass just a little bit so you can hear a little bit more sparkly high, if you will. I say this because you might have a preference between the 3 presets that is available to you on the app, which I'm showing you on my right. And toggling through those will give you different preference for different genres, or you just might like one for all. Now, if you go through these presets and you have ANC on and then turn it off later, they might sound a little bit weird or like something's off. So you might change the profile again. And it's very easy to toggle through the app. The whole recording portion I did for the app was only a minute long because it's so simple and intuitive to use. So toggle through that. Conversely, if you switch over to the ambient mode or pass-through mode, there is a consistent white hiss sound. It's a noise floor that is caused by the microphones pulling in all of the sound around you. It does do a great job if you want to listen to some music or a podcast and you're traveling, but you also don't want to be oblivious to the outside world. So I wouldn't use the pass-through mode for, your audiophile listening experience. It's more for actually interacting with the world when you're out and about, or if you want to hear, a kid or a family member calling for you. Going into sound quality, here is how it measures. And yes, you can see it is a warmer sounding profile, and the bass carries up into the 300 hertz region. So everything sounds a little bit thick and heavier. Now I measured this with ANC off, because there are inconsistencies when you try to measure ANC products with one earbud is in the measuring rig and one isn't. I didn't want to cause any abnormalities or make the data inaccurate. So this is what it sounds like with everything off on the default sound profile. You can obviously change things, but I do want to highlight something. Aside from the recessed mids, which tends to make vocals and guitars kind of step back a little bit, the upper frequency tuning is excellent. It's very forgiving. It's a very safe tune. So out of the box, if you don't want to do any custom EQ to make it sound the way you want, this will basically work for everything, even though it may not shine and be as good as it can be. Now, what I'm showing you on my right now is my custom EQ, which for the most part is basically just a bass reduction. I tend to not need active noise cancellation over 95% of the time I use this. It's very rare that I actually require it. So I tend to leave them both off, and this EQ was my preference to have it for everyday music with everything disabled. All I did was lean out the bass a little bit, and depending on what you're listening to, you can even boost like the 1 to 2K region or even 4 kilohertz. If things sound a little bit dark to you and a little bit less resolving, just take those upper frequencies and lift them slightly. But overall, it doesn't need much. Now, where these really shine is the clarity and the technicalities. So there's one thing to get frequency response right, but there's different ways to go about doing that. And typically some products, especially when you go to wireless buds or single dynamic driver, they may not be as resolving, which means it may not be as clear. Things are kind of like coming at you through a curtain, for example, or it sounds veiled. These drivers, because they use balanced armature drivers for the upper frequencies with the dynamic driver for the bass, I have really strong, impactful bass, but everything is still really clear. This also helps with micro and macro details, What that means is if something is very soft and playing quietly, this will still do a good job at conveying that and producing that subtle sound detail. Then if the music track is extremely busy and complex, your macro detail is also excellent on these. This is really the party trick, in addition to really nice, clean, strong bass, is the ability to have good layering and instrument separation and detail. Balanced armature drivers are really hit and miss for me. There's a very immediate timbre change, which is how natural something sounds. And when you have balanced armature drivers, they don't always sound as close as they do in real life. Something sounds kind of off. And that's if you're really familiar with audio products. I listen to this stuff all the time. They did an excellent job of toning down some of that timbre that usually stands out in a bad way from BA drivers, but this hybrid system is done exceptionally well in that regard. So timbre is great too. Now, when it comes to sound profile out of the box and what genres I think this excels at without touching it, EDM and hip hop first stand out. Vocals are incredibly smooth, and even though they are recessed a little bit, the bass delivery on these are exceptional. And that really comes through with something like a hard-hitting EDM song or rap or something with deeper bass. Some jazz, I really like the bass of these for jazz. However, that upper frequency slight recess to me tends to take away some of the string instrument performance. So if you listen to a lot of rock or acoustic guitars and you want to bring that up to life a little bit, you might find that you want to boost that whole 1 to 4K region I was talking about earlier. But overall, I think it's a safe tune. It works well. And because these mirror each other so well, another issue that tends to happen with hybrid drivers is how the left and right driver or IM earbud matches each other. How coherent is the sound if it's supposed to be producing the exact same note? How well is it doing that? These are matched exceptionally well, so you get a really dead center imaging performance. Great layering, like I said earlier. So overall, it really kind of breaks down some of the barriers of issues I've had with wireless earbuds in the past, which tend to suffer from lack of detail. So overall, the Between 3 AMC, it's not cheap, and that puts it right in line against Apple AirPod Pros and the Samsung Buds and all these other more well-known name brand products. But what stands out with these is the technical proficiency, like I said. So if you find that you have those and they're comfortable and the app works okay, but you just want more detail or you feel like you're lacking something, maybe you have better headphones or IEMs at home, and whenever you put on your earbud, you feel like you're missing something. This helps kind of reduce that, sense of what you're missing at home. And that's a huge accomplishment. Ergonomically is my biggest gripe with these because they're physically larger and their way they're shaped. They're not as easy to travel with if you're leaning on a pillow or you're wearing a beanie or you're a side sleeper. Some people wear IEMs when they lay on their side. They're not great for stuff like that. So again, my only real issue is the physical size of them, but they are very stable once I found the right fit wing on the side and of course the right tip to make sure you have a good seal. I think most people will be happy with this. The wireless performance was excellent as well. Had no issues there. Not a huge fan of that top button tactility kind of being hard to activate. So if you use voice assistant a lot, I guess that might be a challenge as well. But purely on the sound quality and battery life side of things, where arguably it's some of the most important things to consider with a wireless earbud, I think these are great. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I will have links in the description below to help you find them online if you decide to purchase it through that. Otherwise, purchase it wherever you like. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you at the next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.